Here we see the gold price smashed quite a bit. Just randomly drops 15 bucks on no particular news.
The land of Arcadia.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And another exciting week in the gold and silver markets, especially with the Federal Reserve conducting its two-day meeting. God only knows what they will figure out. Top unlimited quantitative easing, interest rates at zero forever. Now we're going to change the definition of inflation. And here to help make some sense out of this complete insanity, Rana, I appreciate you joining me. Rana of Blue Lagoon Resources, who has a gold and silver project. So Rana, it's good to have you on here today talking some gold and silver. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. It's interesting a comment you made about helping you make sense of this insanity. I don't know if anyone can help any one of us understand what this insanity is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the point, not to try and find any sense in what the Fed's doing, because it seems like what they're doing now is very similar to what Ben Bernanke was doing in 2008, 2009, 2010, that they told us was going to be the magical balm and fix everything. And yet here we are, and money's just getting printed faster than ever. And maybe that is their only move.
Well, look, I mean, that's it. I think you've hit it the nail on the head, right? I mean, the issue is they really don't know what to do, and the easiest thing for them to do was to start handing out this money. And in 2008, 2009, they said, yeah, this will be a temporary measure, and we'll get this all fixed. And I think it was about $850 billion, which seemed like a really big number at the time. But I think it was reading lately. Now we're almost at 3 trillion now, right? I mean, it's crazy, right? And the challenge is, look, frankly, what's happened is, you get addicted, right? And what does an addict do, right? Addict needs more and more in order to stay at the same level. So, hence, keep on printing, keep on handing it out, right? And hey, I guess for those of us who are in gold and silver, we'll take it.
Yeah, my favorite joke of the week is that any mining company or precious metals business, they should just put the Jerome Powell, anytime he speaks, make that your homepage. Guy's the greatest salesman ever. Here we see the gold price smashed quite a bit. Just randomly drops 15 bucks on no particular news ahead of the meeting, but let's call the price 1950, 1955 ballpark. What would you say to folks who have seen in the last couple months, gold went over 2,000, new all-time highs, a little bit lower than that, still above the 2011 highs. And again, let's not forget what you just mentioned, Federal Reserve showing no indication of slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, look, this is the normal gyrations of the market, right? I mean, people sell for various reasons, whether it's, they got, a margin call or, whatever happened, right? Or they needed, you're going to get that up and down. But the question is where is it headed? And if you look at 2008, 2009, a very similar thing happened, right? I mean, before it really took off, it actually retracted. People forget that, right? And then it took off and made a new high. And the bottom line is, look, a lot more smarter people, definitely than me, all right, are talking about this, who have a lot of access to research and data. Organizations like Bank of America just recently rejigged their numbers, right? And they said, hey, the gold is headed to 3,000, next year, right? So, I mean, all indications are that you're always going to have these ups and downs, but where is it headed and what are the fundamentals? And the fact of the matter is the printing presses are not stopping. They've ordered extra ink, they're loaded up, and they're just going to keep going, right? And gold loves that and silver loves that environment, right?
Yes, although Rana, I like the way you look at things, although I'm going to have to dispute one point you made. You said the numbers go up and down, which in most cases is true, although I'm going to pull up one here that only seems to go in one direction. The U.S. National.
I stand corrected. I know where you're going with this, yes.
And okay, I have a trivia question for you, if I may. Do you remember what the U.S. national debt was when Baby Bush came into office in 2001?
I do not remember.
Do you want to take a guess?
I can tell you that it's absolutely a fraction of what you're showing me on screen right now.
It was 5 trillion. He doubled it to 10 trillion. Obama doubled it to 20. And I remember a couple of years ago, it was maybe the first or second year of Trump, I was writing articles about the debt. And what struck me was that even at this late in the game, there's not, they're not even pretending to have conversations about cuts. And if you look down, if I don't know if you can see my mouse here, I'm hovering over the dollar to gold ratio, which they calculate basically as how many dollars are being produced in the current year versus current gold year production. They have 30,297 per ounce. I mean, it's almost stunning that the price of gold and silver, even with gold at new all-time highs, but given what's happening in the world, I mean, I'm stunned that we're still looking at sub $2,000 gold. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, of course, for the longest time, people have been talking about, the manipulation that happens, right? I mean, look, these are powerful forces that try to keep these things in check and down. Let's face it, right? Governments lie, right? I mean, constantly, right? I mean, look at inflation, right? They keep telling us, oh, it's not that bad, and hey, all I know is when I was growing up, my dad's a civil engineer. He's retired now. He used to make about $45,000 a year in those days, and a civil engineer today. And our first house at the time would cost about $45,000, about the same amount. Today, that same engineer makes about $85,000. Guess what the cost of the house is today here now, right? It's an over $1 million. But don't worry, inflation isn't that bad, right? So
it's very low, I hear, is what.
Yeah, extremely, right? So they're constantly lying. They're constantly rejigging these numbers. We joke about all this, and we joke about how, or not joke about, but we're excited about that the gold is going up. But the sad reality is, though, that for the average person, right, it's tough, right? It's tough because how do you make ends meet? Because the power of the dollar is getting weaker and weaker, and people are going, man, I'm working harder and harder. Both people are working, the kids are working, the dog's working. I mean, everyone's working, but how come we can't seem to get ahead? We go to Starbucks and the coffee's like $6. And like, what? Right? You go to a movie, and after the popcorn and the Coke and the 7-Up or whatever you have, and the M&Ms, it's like $80. And you're like, what is going on? But they keep telling us everything's okay, right? So it's unfortunate. And a lot of people say, well, look, how am I'm just a regular old person working here. How am I supposed to understand, how all these economic policies work? Well, I don't know if it's that complicated. I mean, if you break it down, right, the bottom line is, it's like your household, right? There's only so much money that comes in and only so much money that should go out, right? But the challenge is, right, if you want to live beyond your means, and you're borrowing from Bob, and then you borrow from Kathy, and you borrow from Mary, and you borrow from John, and you borrow from Joe, right? At some point, you got to pay these people back, right? And so what do you do, right? So it's a very tough situation. That's where we started off in the beginning, is saying, I don't know if anyone can explain this insanity, and where is it headed? I mean, I don't know. I'm speechless when I think about these things and thinking, what are these leaders thinking? And it's unfortunate that, they're run by interest groups, they're spineless, and no one has the courage and the guts to say, look, we got to stop, okay? We got to stop and take a look at exactly what we got to do. We got to do some painful things, right? Hello, maybe gold standard going back, right? But here's the problem. If they do that, how are you going to continue to lie?
Yep.
Right?
I mean, you have Judy Shelton, who's being considered for the Fed, and I love reading the comments of the other congressmen are like, "Oh, this isn't any time to try some of these radical ideas." And I'm sitting there like, do any of these guys even know what the whole point of the dollar was? You were originally supposed to be able to redeem it for some amount of gold, and they just act like it's a foreign science. Although, again, that's why I appreciate folks like you that stand up and speak out about what you're seeing, and also finding solutions to these things. I mean, I know some people could say, well, they're saying this or that because they're in gold or silver. I would say that we're in gold and silver for those reasons. And for all the folks that are saying, I see this, and what is the solution? That's at least a good part of the financial portion of that. So Rana, would I be correct in saying, as we look at the headline where there's Jeremy, and Fed could still move markets Wednesday, even with rates on hold for the foreseeable, I'm assuming, future. That's calling it generous. I would venture, I'll bet an ounce of silver that we never see rates raised. And I'm curious, on a scale of 1 to 10, Rana, how concerned about the low inflation are you? I know that Jeremy is very worried about the low inflation. It could pop out of any, actually be careful behind you. I see it's creeping up in your backyard. The audacity that, I think he even called it an inflation deficit. If that term actually could even possibly make sense would be a whole other story. But any thoughts on that they're actually saying inflation is too low?
Look, again, it's so frustrating, right? When you think about this, right? They constantly are lying, right? You see, the challenge is, we get very comfortable, right? And, the old saying, how do you cook a frog, right? 1 degree at a time, right? You take a frog, you throw it in the boiling water, it's going to jump right out, right? But you know what? You put it in nice little lukewarm water, and then you notch it up a little 1 degree, and then a little 1 degree, and another degree, and another degree. And before you know it, the frog's doing backstrokes, man. It's like having a good time. Doesn't even know it's going to get cooked soon, right? And that's we're the frog, right? In this nice little lukewarm water that's heading towards a boiling. So they're constantly rejigging these numbers, constantly lying to us. And you made a point earlier. You said, well, what's the solution? What do we do? Well, I can't, solve the international problem, right? I by myself, one little guy, but I know what I can do, and that's look after my family, right? And the only way that I know how to do that in these crazy times, I mean, have you ever in our lifetime witnessed all these things that are happening, right? We've got riots going on, right? We've got demonstrations going on. We've got the unprecedented rate of printing, right? It's almost like they've got stock in some printing company and some ink manufacturers, right? I mean, like it's going on, so they want to keep printing. And then on top of that, you got this world pandemic. I mean, who could predict or projected all these things happening at the same time? So what do you do, right? I think the only thing that you can do is as a family, right, band together and figure out how do we preserve wealth, right? And listen, how am I doing it, right? I'm buying as much silver as I can. I'm buying as much gold as I can. And you can never figure out what's the bottom, what's the top. You just have to do it, whatever you can afford. You just do it on a weekly or bi-monthly or whatever monthly basis, and you start accumulating. And frankly, you invest in companies that have a tremendous upside, so you can leverage it, right? You can leverage your money. And I think that's all one can do, is to protect and figure out how can we try to make sure that our own family is protected from this craziness.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think is nice about the precious metals community, as opposed to my Wall Street days, where on Wall Street it was very much, how can I make money at this guy's expense? And while I'm sure there's some characters in metals too, there sure is a lot less of that. And I think you don't stick through the bear market as long and extended as it's been, unless you really believe in that. And I think there's a lot of good people that are seeing this. And I don't know if we can control the Fed, but we can control how we respond, which I appreciate you doing. Rana, something I'd love to get your opinion on. Again, we focus a lot on silver here, and I found it interesting just the way the silver companies spoke about when silver went from 17 to 18 or 18 to 19, how that really made quite an impact. Now we have silver $10 higher. We have gold at 2,000. So certainly I'd largely agree with you that we'll see even higher bullion prices at some point, I think sooner than later. But even with the levels that they're at now, can you put into perspective what the margins for some of these mining companies are going to be looking like? Especially, I think we'll see more of that in the third quarter results. And I think it's hard for people, it's even hard for me to really get it in context So if you could talk to that, I think that'd be helpful for folks.
Oh yeah, listen, gold companies right now are very, and silver companies are very excited because they can see the profits, right? They can see the numbers. Typically a good project like the one we have. I'm president of a junior exploration company. Our cost our production is going to be under $1,000, right? All in cost, right? And at gold, I mean, they were doing okay at 1450. But gold at 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, plus is an extremely profitable, a business, right? I mean, we were doing, we did some back of the envelope, calculations, and based on just in one of the companies that I'm involved, with, based on just a very limited amount of production. I mean, the free cash flow is in the millions of dollars, right? So it's a very, very exciting time. And then those companies, if they have silver, which often you have, right, when there's gold, at these silver prices, a lot of the costs are based on gold. Silver just becomes free, so it pays up for all your expenses. So therefore, your profit goes up. So yeah, gold companies right now are very, very excited, and definitely a place where investors need to look.
And Rana, I just asked when you come on the show. I mean, you should say free silver. It's hard for me to show myself with that one. I'm also curious. It's interesting, especially you have an entrepreneurial background, and so you've seen some different markets. What happens? I mean, are we going to see a lot of takeouts where some of these bigger companies? Doesn't seem like there's a lot of easy projects lying around. So curious how you see that playing out.
Yeah, there isn't, of course, it's getting tougher and tougher to find, these resources, right? 100%. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of M&A activity. So typically in the industry, you got the major players, right, that are producers. They don't like exploration. They don't want to be involved in the exploration, that's where junior miners come in, right? That's where like companies like the one I run, Blue Lagoon Resources, that's what we do. Our job is we're higher risk. Our job is to go and find, where Mother Nature kind of hid the stuff, right? But once we find it and we can show them we found it, they're knocking on your door, right? So you're going to see a lot of M&A activity here coming up in the gold and silver space.
Which I think is certainly going to be, it's going to be fun for me to cover. I know it's going to be fun for you given the position that you're in. And perhaps before we wrap up, you could just let folks know a little bit about what you've been doing at Blue Lagoon, the quick rundown of the profile. And fortunately, you stuck around and recorded a nice profile piece on that. And if you could give folks an idea of what they'll be seeing there.
Yeah, so Blue Lagoon Resources, a company I put together about a year ago. I've come off a couple of pretty big wins in the cannabis sector, and I really like mining because that's where I started in the capital markets about 10 years ago. And I was reading a lot about what we just talked about, the macroeconomics of what was happening around the world. And I love gold in particular and silver, so I really wanted to start this company. So I started it a year ago. We have an incredible project up in northern British Columbia in Canada, a very safe territory. And what I love best about it are three or four things. One, it's easily accessible. These mining operations can be very, very expensive. You talked earlier about expense. Well, how do you keep the expense down? Well, this property is just outside the town of Smithers, British Columbia, which is a small little mining town. You can drive to the property, 45, 50-minute drive, all year round. So you don't need any helicopters to fly in. You don't need to have any expensive camps. The miners can go, the exploration people can go, work there, come back, have dinner, in the evening, kiss their kids good night and get back to work again. Those are very important factors. Many of these mining operations. And then we got a fully permitted mine that just requires 3 key amendments to get it back into production. So we're working on that right now. And 90% of the property is not explored yet. So, I'm excited because as CEO, my job is if an investor comes in today, how do I make sure that, if they come at X, how do I make sure they exit at X plus Y, right? And how I do that is by expanding, what we have. We have the 90% of the properties unexplored. We have 15 very high grade veins that we already know are there. So we're going to be starting to work, on those. And then we got this massive land package that hasn't been explored yet. So that's what we got, in a nutshell, what we got on going on in Blue Lagoon. And I'm very excited about it. I've been waiting for 10 years for this run, right? I got involved in the capital markets 10 years ago in mining, right? And got my rear end really kicked badly, right? Because the industry collapsed, right? But boy, am I excited. It's hard to sleep. My geologist is excited. Everybody's just excited to see that the run is here, and projects like ours, I think, are going to do very well.
Yeah, I think you have a nice position you're coming from, and I also think there's a lot of value to going through some of the times where it doesn't work out. I remember in my trading days, it was interesting. A lot of traders out here, they would say, you'll always remember the first time you got absolutely pummeled. And hopefully we learn from it. I know you have a lot of experience in the entrepreneurial side, which I think is quite valuable, especially in this industry. There is your website, Blue Lagoon Resources, which is also in the description field below. Although, Rana, I appreciate as a good entrepreneur and marketer, you even made it easy enough, folks. You don't even have to go there right now because Rana stuck around and recorded another quick interview, gives a profile of the company, which is coming your way now.